latest information on crop circles and possible UFO connections. Please could I give a welcome to Busty Taylor.
Okay, Omar, well, thank you very much for that. Quite a few I've seen before, some of you I haven't. Who's seen me before? Alright, how many people have been into crop circles? So none of you have. Okay. Alright, well, I'll start off from a little bit of history. Crop circles are worldwide, and not only just in corn crops, they're in all sorts of crops, trees, snow, and any type of plant, live grass. So it just isn't corn. You must get that established. And there's been some in France and spinach. So they seem to be going anywhere. How long has it been going? That depends on how you research it and what you believe it. I personally think it's been going on since time began. It's just the fact that for some reason it seems to have escalated over the last few years into a phenomenon we've seen quite a lot of. Where it's leading to, that's a good question. The research moves on each year, a little bit at a time. This year, I'll come through to the end of it in the program I have here with the slides. I'll give this year the crop circles, winding up with a bit of scientific material, and then what we discovered late this year, very late. So without any more to do, can we put the lights down a little bit so they get a, unless you want to leave it like that. Oh, that was good. Okay, well here we have a crop circle that was just on the north side of the M4, east of Swindon. And you can see the size by the road in the bottom right-hand corner there. Now when I take the photographs, I do try to get people inside for perspective or a vehicle. Another way of judging it, the tram lines, the tractor marks, on average nowadays, are about 22 metres across. So that's 60 feet between the tram lines. Then you've got to add 7 foot, 8 foot for the tractor wheel marks as well. So you can work out roughly from the air how big the circle is. Now in this actual field, we had other circles up here in the middle of the tram lines once again. Now this is a feature that Doug and Dave, the so-called circle makers, have not admitted to. The very small ones. And let's get it straight, they didn't do all the crop circles that we have on record. They did a few. And I think it's for commercial reasons. That year they tried to get £15,000 of national newspaper money. Fortunately for them, they never got paid up. But it made life difficult for all the researchers. Okay, let's move on into the next one. This one was at Etchelhampton. If those people that are sort of scientific, chemistry minded, that is like a crystal. You kind of crystal have, that's what it looks like. A lot of people say a snowflake. And again, you can get a rough idea how big that is by the tram lines. I'm flying about 800 feet mostly when I take the photographs. To take the photographs, I open the cockpit door, took the plane on the side, pop the camera out, and take the photograph. If you'd like to come and have a trip with me during the summer of '94, you're quite welcome to come down and I'll give you a flip round. Any volunteers? Okay. Well, this year on one of my flights earlier on in the year, the petrol bowser boy didn't put the fuel cap on 100%. Whilst flying along with 4 hours of fuel, the fuel gauges suddenly started to hurtle downwards, and we realised, after looking at the back of the plane, that I was draining about a gallon of fuel every 3 minutes. And we got back to the airfield and landed, and when we looked in the fuel tank, we couldn't see any fuel at all. And what happened, it had a rubber tank, and it vacuumed in, so it gave sort of a false reading on the gauges. And I can show you. It was quite interesting. Nearly got hit by a Jaguar jet, but that's another story. This is a pole shot. Now I've designed a technique where I put a camera on a 20-foot, 30-foot or 40-foot pole, and I trigger a 10-second delay, get it up in the air, and I have to look at the camera angle and judge how to get that in shot. Actually, I'm standing in a road there. If I go back one, so I'm standing about there. I can't see that because I'm down in a dip, 10 feet. And I'm judging where the circle is. That's the telegraph pole line on the edge of the road. And I've managed to get some pretty good shots by that technique. The only problem is this year I've been banned from going into too many fields because so many people are going in without permission. The farmers have basically asked me not to go in because they know everybody else will follow it. This was down east of Silbury Hill. You can call it the Peckerman or whatever it is. I don't know what to make of it because again, I didn't get into this one. Unfortunately, it's a little bit blurred because on that day it was a bit turbulent and the plane's chucking around a little bit. But we have all these little teeny ones lining up. And elsewhere in the field, we may get some about 9 inches across, dead centre of the tram line. This one was up north of Marlborough. I didn't get into this one. You can tell that because you won't see a pole shot. And the aerial shots, you won't get a pole shot as well. This one, the 3/6 the mark of the devil. So we've been informed, or 3 9s, whichever way you want to interpret it. I managed to get into that one with a load of American people, but unfortunately it's been trampled to death before I got there. So I'm a bit iffy about its authenticity. This one, right round the road, and you can see the grape shot here, here, and on up this slope. There were more going on up that slope there. Now the 3/6 or 9s would be down here about a quarter of a mile. And what happened after about 2 weeks, another one appeared up here, the same distance away, more or less forming a giant triangle in regards to the positioning of the circles. And then very late in the season, we had another one that appeared out over here to the northeast. So many people are chasing the crop circles that no matter how you try to be there first nowadays, even driving around 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm always the last one in. There's so many people investigating them. Now this is a man-made effort. The idea was to try to get a response. A lot of people are assuming that the crop marks mean we want to talk to you, and they're put in our fields by an unknown intelligence. And a lot of people are then going out, creating symbols similar to this to try to see if they get a response. Unfortunately, on that experiment, they got absolutely nothing at all. This one is the top of Cheesefoot Head. It's an 80-foot circle in a rape field that's about to be cut. You can see where people have already walked to it. I didn't get into that one, but somebody who went into it said that it seemed pretty good, but people had already been there before them. Now this is my problem. You're lucky out here where you are. You haven't got so many people getting into your fields. I only wish we had the same thing down south. This little teeny one is in the same field as last year. We had the Mercury, which ran across this way. More or less in the same spot. And with crop circles, we have noted that there is a definite distance between here and there and the opposite way. In other words, it's fixed exactly to within an inch of the edge of the circles. That's been going on for years. We had one down where I live, next door to water. Water has a bearing on crop circles quite a lot. This one was near Devizes. This turned up later down at Guildford. You can see the sizing again by the tractors, how big it all is. The farmer only allowed the researchers to go in there and nobody else. They were the only ones allowed to go in. So I didn't get in there being as I flew over it so many times. Now this is the third one where you have that big ring on the crossroads. This is number 3. Now that was up here. That was the last one. But the first day that it arrived, it started here and it finished there. And what went on there was a load of kale. That was a load of kale, like from here to the table, 10 feet of it, and that stopped right next door to it. Actually in the circle here, bent perfectly. We managed to get in there within sort of 6 hours of it forming, and I got some good shots. What I didn't know was the fact that if it stopped there on Saturday morning, this came Sunday night. And then when I photographed it 4 weeks later, there was another one up here, which I only found out when I did my first lecture in America. That's the plants from it. You can see how bent they are, how it's broken, and the majority of that circle was exactly the same. It looked good. Any questions so far? This one was again along the M4. And what happened first, this main piece here was the first part. And then what happened, these all started to turn up later. And that was the last one. That's where people walk. And yet here, dead center, on Mark II. And that's 30 feet out. And it has been suggested that people can drive a mechanical vehicle up here with a long hydraulic arm, lower themselves down into there, create the circle, take themselves back out in the field again. The only trouble is we always check the tram lines to the formations for that particular reason. So no one will drive up there and do that. That's definitely a man-made one, just north of Derbyshire, not far from the airfield, because last year we had a load in the same field. So we know it's kids, they come up here and into the field. So just showing you the difference between the two. The Gang Association to water. There's the river, there's your cattle troughs, and we have a lot of orientation near water. We don't know what the connection is, apart from in Japan. In 1990, they had one in a rice field on the top terrace, with 20,000 gallons of water disappeared from that terrace. Now, it didn't run down the terrace at all because it would have flooded the entire system. 22,000 gallons of water is an awful lot of water to shift overnight. We don't know where it's going. This one, just north of Avebury. A lot of people got into that one and they found little teeny tuffets here. And that one there had a lovely little crab. Came up about the size, 9 inches high, and it was over like half a ball. It's absolutely amazing how you find some of the center of these circles beautifully molded. And I'd like to see some people create it, because I find that impossible. You try it and it doesn't work. This one was over near Warminster. That's a public footpath running across the field. I'm not allowed to go into it, but I've got to admit I didn't like it. From the air, it looked ropey, untidy. So I would say that that is a joke. This one was the top of Cheesefoot Head. Size, people, and as you can see, it looks interesting. but I would say that is a joke. Because a lot of people went into that and they found the corn was all locked out here as though somebody pushed it down. Now, I've been into golden fields like this where it's all down, not a piece of corn is laying on the ground in there at all. This one, just down the bottom of the road from the other one. This one looks interesting because you can see it actually doesn't swirl all the way around. So it moves out to about there. That bit moves out over to there. So it's nearly balanced out. It's about half a revolution. And this is what you can do from the air. It looks impressive, but until I get information as to what it was like inside, I can't really comment. Going back to the Warminster one, this is what happens over a period of 3 or 4 weeks. Other people start to get into the fields and start to do this. And that's the quickest way to get scientists switched off. When they see things like this, they immediately down tools and say, we don't want to know. Because as far as we're concerned, it's just a big joke. That was the 4th one around the ring at the crossroads, the last one of the year in that particular area. And that's the day it happened. As you can see, no one's been out there yet, because no one's managed to get into here. And you must remember, that's about 25 feet from there to there. Must be 30 that side. You can do it by taking a lot of equipment in. So that's why we need to check all this here. And it's also visible from that crossroads. A lot of people this year had night vision goggles, infrared sights, and they were going around all nights. Some of them were hidden, watching for people to see whether or not they would do that. I know the Army's been looking as well with their helicopter stuff. It's surprising how good their equipment is, actually, what they can actually see at night. This one was down at Alton Barnes. This was the only one they had on there, sorry, the second one they had in this field. And this one they had them in 1990, but this was the second one this year. And again, so many people have been in it, they formed paths, and I'm quite honestly, I wouldn't like to comment on that one at all. But if I'd got there first, I could have made a good assumption as to whether it was a genuine one or not. What happens, they seem to always be in association to ancient tumuli. That's another feature that corresponds to crop circles. Ancient markings, field markings, rings, tumuli, ley lines, which are geometric lines which seem to circumnavigate the earth, but for some reason these crop circles form either on the edge of them or absolutely through the middle. And 2 or 3 people here saw me messing around here in the room, and there is a line going right through the room. We'll go into that later on, a little bit of doubting. But that's another thing that happens. Why the crop circles associate with an invisible line, either in the centre or edges onto it, the same way as it's using the tram line as a reference point. The only way that can be done is something can see from above. I have photographic records where there is a colour change, and it references on the colour change as well. These are the things that Doug and Dave have never spoken about. And that's why I'd love to have got them on TV. I've already challenged them to a £500 bet to come on stage with me like I am now. They bring their evidence, or bring mine. But they haven't accepted it. This one was 400 feet long. We've got little teeny ones out in the middle of nowhere. Very impressive. And what happened very near this, another one appeared which we didn't know about. But one of the experiments threw up something interesting in here So when we were asked to go back and take more samples, unfortunately they'd cut the field, and as we drove back we found another one in a cut field. We took samples from that, sent them off to America, and we got asked to go back again. Now, I'm showing you this because that's the 3, 1, 2, 3, but here we got one on the end again, which when I flew the aircraft at the time, I hadn't noticed. There had been another addition to that formation. And you can see the tufts in that one that I showed you earlier on. A little bit better when you get a good sun angle, you can get it out. Anybody recognize any of the symbols at all? No? This one was ordinary devices. By the time they got the aircraft back on the ground and drove a car to it, it had been cut up. The farmers are moving so fast now, they're even cutting them out of the green field. If there's a mark in that field and the farmer doesn't like it, he'll go out there with a mechanical strimmer and strim it right out, the whole lot. He'll turn it into a square. That's how bad it is. I hate to think what's going to happen next year if people just keep going into the fields. I really do. But it looks really impressive when you get the sun just right and a golden field. This one was up near Bythorn, near Peterborough. This was the last one of the season as far as I know in the Cambridge area. The ring here is where a clairvoyant walked all the way around the edge of the circle because she wanted to go into it, but when she got there she had a feeling she shouldn't go into it. So she walked literally around the very edge of it, all the way. So that original circle was clean. Now I didn't get up there to see that until about 7 weeks later. Let's just go back a minute. Lo and behold, we've got a little teeny one up here. A little 9-inch one. See, this is what happens. You see the slide once or twice and then you notice something else. Yeah, that's a little 9-inch one up there. Out in the middle of nowhere. Now it's very near a military base that used to stockpile nuclear weapons or something, because that is a nuclear shelter there. And behind there is a very tall observation post. And this is another thing that happens, that crop circles seem to always surround military establishments besides water. Power cables, another one. How do crop circles form? Well, the only way we've worked it out, it seems to be a beam of energy directed from above. This will explain how the references are used, how they can take place under power cables without any problem with the power cables. They seem to start from the outside and move to the center, or they start from the middle and move out. This is a pole shot. The design, it's a new design. We hadn't seen this type of thing before. But if you're going to do it, that's going to take some planning when you think of it. You have to be very, very accurate right from the word go. Now we're going to look at one of these, and you'll find that you'll see here there is a 2-inch wide band, 2-foot wide band, going all the way around that. You can see how it's thickened up just on the edge there. That's steel nails, by the way. There it is. You can see that it's 2 foot wide and it runs all the way around the outer edge. I don't know what to make of it, but I think it's in the Buddhist Mandela style. I may be wrong, but that's what I think it is. An ancient symbol that fits that type of religion. But then we asked Jim Snable to demonstrate making a charm bracelet, which is a circle we had last year. So we started off with this design in the middle, which looks like the radioactive sign. But he finished up with that. It was all smashed up, because when you work in green corn, you actually leave footmarks all over it. You trample it to death. And as you can see, he tried to be very serious, and he made himself look a complete fool. If you wonder what that design is meant to be, it's meant to be a roller. Here's the hand. Because the challenge was to recreate something that he claimed to have done the year before, and he was given the opportunity to do it in daylight. It took him 3 hours to achieve that. And he had to work very, very hard and to a plan, and he had to keep stopping and checking the plan. Now that's in daylight. You can imagine trying to do that at night. Now we're going to go back now and do a little bit of testing. This was taken from a crop circle on 89. If you look at it carefully, it's bent and twisted round 1.5 revolutions, all at the same time. Not broken. That was from a crop circle that had quarters to it at Winterbourne Stoke. Burn markings. This is what Omar Fowler, who's in the room with me tonight, he's produced a paper which has shown these markings to be something to do with a heat source of some kind. And we can only put it down to a microwave beam. We have no other way of describing what we're talking about, because it's pioneering days. We're looking for the information. Now that again is taken from a field in 1989. And it wasn't until 91, I think, Omar, when you came up with your paper. You still need a holiday, yeah? So here we see him with his microwave thing, which works very well. And his theory, with other information we have from 1986, seems to bear this out, that there is a microwave energy of some kind that's causing the plants to fail at certain points and heights. These are all locations around here. Again, you have the dark markings and bends. And this is from a field in Minnesota, USA. The time the gentleman had this at his home, he didn't realise that this bit in here completely was joined up, and he was treating it as one piece. I realised there was something wrong because it seemed to give, and I could pull it apart, and that has been heated completely apart from within this piece here, and yet the two leaves on the outside showed no signs of burning at all. That piece is though you stuck it into a fire and you charcoaled it. That's how much heat there was. So it's cooked from the inside out, but it didn't touch the outside. Now the interesting thing about that maize, being it's in the States, it was about 6 foot odd tall. As you can see, that's the root, and that's about 18 inches to there. That's about 18 inches, and you're talking about 3 feet off there. The piece in the middle that carried the fruit, which is another 2 foot, had disappeared. Where that's gone, nobody knows. So there's 2 foot of that particular crop missing. And the swathe was about 17 metres in length, and about, I thought it was 22 metres across, but it was 22 feet across, and it was beveled like that. And it went in, and it turned around like a big horseshoe, and it was about 17 metres in length. Now that's in America. Now Dr. Leavenwood, who's been experimenting with the crops, has discovered that they do undergo a heat change. In other words, they're heated up, the pores will open up on the corn and expand. There's holes all down the side as though there's been heat and the pressure's got to escape. the actual corn seems to have been heated up as well. And it seems to be a much stronger plant than they re-germinate it. Well, I had a book in 1967 which showed the same type of thing which happened in Australia in 1966. And they called them flying saucer nests. And you can't rule out that flying saucers could be involved. I've never ruled it out. I've seen too many unusual things myself. One of them in '88 was actually witnessed up here in Nottingham the same night. The description was identical. And luckily I had mine all written down and witnessed by people before it ever came out in the news. Russia, we had Russian people over to look into our crop circles. They have claimed that people involved with crop circles seem to undergo a shift in their mental problems and become aggressive. Yes, I found that too. There seems to be a side effect like that. That's the Russians. A lot of people get involved with crop circles. They come from the United States, they go back home only to find that the crop circles are arriving in the area where they live before they get back. That's another thing that's happened. It's happened to German people as well. They came over here, carried out experiments, went back to Germany, went on holiday, and where they stopped 6 kilometers down the road, there was a crop circle. Coincidence? 1977, USA, not a very good photograph because it's copied from a book, showing the same thing. And of course in that area they had a lot of cattle mutilations. We've had some this year in England, but that's been kept very quiet indeed. But of course when I'm around the States I like to look into all the ancient stuff, the 7,000 feet up, and these Indian tribes live in the caves here. That's me standing on the edge. And of course you have carvings all up in here, and some of them, like we've had. The Aborigines got these, well they call them the rings of time actually. They just found some ancient artifacts out in Australia this year, and the archaeologists have to admit that they've got to give the Aborigines far more credit than they've ever done before with what they've found. They haven't come up exactly with what they've discovered, but they said that it's going to change their views on the Aborigines an awful lot. Now of course they suffer the same problem that we do, that people are going down to these ancient sites that are totally unguarded, and people are chiseling new ones into the rocks around the old ones. That's not just happening here in New Mexico. I've been to Taliesin in the Arizona desert, and they have suffered the same fate. People will go out and chisel new ideas alongside the old. And it's just a pity really, because it's so important. When the Spaniards arrived, they could follow the paths that were cut into the ground, literally by human feet, and find out where all these ancient camps were. You can go into these places, lift up the soil on the floor, ancient pottery and things. Very interesting stuff. I spent about 2 hours climbing around here, up and down these ladders. But in the early days, in 1985, I've been interested in archaeology all my life, and these are ancient burial rings. And in the first few years of 85 to 89, most crop circles came in 7 sizes only. And these ancient marks, thousands of years old, also match the same diameters, including the dowsable width running around here. And you can still douse those today, exactly the same way as you can douse a crop circle when it's in the field, and after they've ploughed the field, you can still douse out the crop circle. It's still there. Invisible, but you can douse it out. Direction of flow is diameter. And lo and behold, That's 3,500 years old, just northwest of Stonehenge. The average shape, size of a UFO. And I've been on, the first time I took Omar out there, I said I've lived here all my life, born and bred in that exact area, driven by these things, and I never knew they were exactly that shape until I got involved with crop circles. And I made a statement on the crop circle communique tape that we seem to have to go back into our past to find the answers to our future. I still stand by that today, and I think that's the way it's going to go. There's dozens of people in the States looking at all these ancient things. I'm quite willing to show you a tape which express that. But the last thing that happened this year was the fact that we got asked to go back to a crop circle that we found late. I'm going to show you what happens. That's magnetic north, as you can see. It's 8 inches from the ground. And when you put it down on the ground, and I'm putting it down, I've orientated myself to go straight down besides that. 20 degrees different. A swing of 20 degrees. Now we got asked to take a magnet into the crop circle to see whether or not we could pick anything up, because the samples had shown that there was something odd. So we put a magnet into it. And we had stones sticking to the side of the magnet, and other bits and pieces as well. Not only that, a piece of straw also stuck into the magnet with the stone. You see, right? But that's what turned up at the very end of the year, and every year we wind up with another clue. We're moving forward all the time. It's pioneering days. No one's helping us. It's just a case of go out, try this, try that. Oh, this seems to happen. Have another go. And yet they say 2 old men in their 60s can make crop circles. I can do that. I'll take my help. And that is that. All right. So that's where we are so far. You can ask me some questions if you want. A bit quick. Any questions about what we've been dealing with?
When our down some of the actual land of crop circles, the actual energy actually goes up the tram line.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you know you saying when you actually check the tram lines to see if anything's gone up,
Yeah.
is there any sign that their energy going up the tram lines could have changed any of the actual crops? Have you ever
Maybe
noticed
you go up the tram lines, but you're sure you're not dozing people going up the tram lines?
No, the energy.
I haven't found that. What I found is when you douse up a tram line, you sometimes find an invisible ring that hasn't fired up. It can be way out.
It's as if it's finding a weakness, and where there's a weakness, like where that's happened, where the track just applied it over, it's when you actually sort of pendulum down, you find that it's actually gone straight to the line, as if it, at the same time as it was forming the shape. And I just wonder if there's any physical evidence, because I've had a look at a couple of local ones and not actually seen anything.
No, I haven't noticed anything. Well, physically, no. The other thing I have doused is an invisible ring around the outside of these things. And I've often wondered why you can get sometimes 3 rings, one after the other, and you can douse it out as easy as pie, and you get the width and everything. And then about 3 weeks later, you might get that design come up. It goes to 3 rings around.
Is there any sort of anything happening in the what the significance of the sort of crops that seem to be able to show up because that's appearing? I mean, why? You said spinach. But what have they all got in common?
Other than the fact that they're crops that we have to use for food, if you want to attract attention, to say to somebody, look, I'm about, that's the best place to do it.
I mean, the physical characteristics. I suppose it's relatively stiff, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it has to go under a heat change to get it to go over. No matter how hard you try and push these pop down without breaking it. Try it. You're breaking it, it's all right. So the 40-foot pine trees they had in Wisconsin in 1984, most of those trees, 75% of them were bent over. And if you remember a 40-foot pine tree, it must have a trunk about that thick. And only 25% of them were broken. And they were all laid round clockwise as well, or anti-clockwise, I can't remember which. We've got them in trees here in England as well. I've got photographic proof and video proof of it, but unfortunately we were 4 years late, but it was still there. You can still see it. The actual growth at that time was about that high. And it was pushed down, and it's now sort of 15, 20 foot. It was grown up around it. But yeah, I've got that video. And it happened the same year as the one in Wisconsin. I can show you some of last year's crop circles if you want to see them. I've got a few extra here. Do you want to see them?
Yeah.
Okay. I've just suddenly looked. I've got a little ones down here. It's the fact that where I live it doesn't snow very much. And then when it decides to snow, it shuts the airfield so I can't take off. So I can't win. But I'm determined this year that if it snows enough to stay on the ground long enough and we get the airfield open, because we now have got a hard runway to use and it's serviceable, I will fly as often as I can in the snow. The only problem is trying to find a whole, brilliant white mass is very difficult because we might only get about that much snow and that's very difficult to see. So you need I've seen something from the ground and then go and investigate it. Because wouldn't it be nice if you had a great big expanse of unbroken snow and a beautiful circle in the middle without a mark to it? That surely must convince everybody there. Anyway, I'll just show you. You all know where we are. Where are we on this map then, Omar? Up here somewhere, are we?
Yeah, come on, put your finger out. Stick your finger in the middle.
Here?
that's it.
Higher and to the right. Bit higher.
Oh, Derby. Right on it. Well, as you know, I operate in this patch here. That's where I operate. We've had crop circles all the way down here, and even in Ireland this year, we had crop circles up in the mountains of Kilkerry or somewhere there on about. I haven't seen the photographs, but I'm sure that they were there. There are quite a few out this way. The one that is here somewhere, where I went to, is over here. The Bythorn one. But this is the patch that I fly. As you can see, all these are military areas. These are ammunition dumps. That's our nuclear biological site here. That's where I fly from. All the dots on here represent circles in 1990. And the different coloured ones represent the months. Now this is a military map. It's not meant to be used on a public thing like this. I've scrubbed out here for official use only. Because it's a military helicopter pilot's one. But that is Salisbury Plain. This is Larnham Air Traffic Zone. This area here is the nuclear places at P.R.A. and where they make our fuses for the nuclear bombs here. Greenham Common. And of course this is where we had crop circles right on their front door this year. Literally within half a mile of the establishment itself. So close that I wasn't allowed to penetrate that area with a plane. Not even in a banking turn. I got advised on the radio, I don't advise you to turn left, sir. I advise you to keep going. That's what I got advised, because they can take your license away if you go in there. We had a friend who got lost, and there is a disused piece of grass there that looks like an airfield next door to that. He didn't know where he was landing. He taxied right up to the door, got out, found some men in white overalls and said, "Excuse me, could you tell me where I am?" He said, "Well, don't you know?" And he said, "No, come with us." And they led him to the military police. When he tried to prove who he was, he rang up our airfield. He said, "Tell them my name's so-and-so, Lofty, they all know who I am." So when they rang up the airfield, of course we knew what had happened. We said, "No, we don't know him." And he stayed there for 2 days. Well, this was the first one that I found in 1985, and that's where we took Omar. You can see how tidy it all was in those days. And you got to admit, it's even then I'm looking for where people walked into the field, you see, even in 1985. And I noticed that somebody had trodden down and pushed the straw into the ground, and you can just make out the marks of the boots. And what I found out, of course, that the military had been in there 2 hours before I did to inspect it out. But if you look carefully at this one, you'll see that there is a contrast change about there. As though something flat had actually banged the top of the corn, crimped it over. Can you see the colour change? Just about there. And that runs all the way around the circle. You can see it here, how it's banged over more than it is here. The only thing I can think of is a flat bottom object. Whatever it is, it doesn't quite touch the ground when it doesn't need to. Of course, all the ancient symbols, Celtic symbols. No matter where you look, this is a early Christian bowl, 86 AD, from the British Museum. Everywhere I looked, in those first few weeks of the crop circle, there's 5 here, here's a wheat, into that. Everywhere you looked, you seem to find it. And that's when we decided, measured out Stonehenge and found that my crop circle of 85 would fit into there exactly. And over the years we have found that the diameters fit between the inside ring of the stone, or it takes account of the width of the stone and is the outside diameter. And believe it or not, Stonehenge and the pyramids, Stonehenge took 3,500, 4,000, 5,000 years to build, and yet it seems to have been made by the same architect, same as the pyramids. They took an awful long time to build pyramids, and yet they all seem to have been done by the same architect. I was speaking with a gentleman in the Minnesota University, and he has said that he's carried out tests and he's got the pyramids as 23,500 years old, and he's still going on down. And again, the ancient symbols here. Now, I've never got over that shot, but of course, Stonehenge and how the dazable marks all the way around it seem to correspond to what we had with the crop circles. And in 1986, this was at Cheesefoot Head. This is the one where I mentioned today on the radio that we have a counterclockwise ring in the same circle, and it's just here. And you can see a colour change just around the edge here. You can just see it change, and I'm not joking, you could not see the join where the two crops were the opposite. It was impossible to see, but straight edges. And they matched the straight edges in the trinamon in here, in Stonehenge. Coincidence? If Doug and Dave had been going around, they'd have to measure all this from the plan, this, go out in the field, measure it out, stake it out to get it right. That's Omar. And that's where we found the first ones with the 22 inches, wasn't it, Omar?
Yes, that's right.
In that one, that's where we found the first ones at the particular one. And we've been chasing that one ever since. And this type of information is set on for a while because you don't want people to go out and play games with that type of information. Because they could create a crop circle and then leave those particular parts in there to trap you. That's why we hold certain things back each time. Because we need to do that to protect ourselves. You think to yourself, okay, that's what I'm talking about. No, that's where rabbits have chewed it off. Stand up on the back legs, chew it off, falls on the ground, and they eat the stuff on the floor. That's how they've done it. Alright? Now this one, believe it or not, I've got it back to front, but this is the one I described where it's a right-handed swirl. The stuff on the ground is left-handed, but I've put this in back to front. Can you put the light on that, Omar, please? Now that is a left-handed anti-clockwise circle. When you get into it, the plants in there are all going anti-clockwise. I can assure you. I have video of it. But you have a right-handed spiral. You try to get across to anybody. How do you create that? How would you do that to make it go one way but lean at the other? How would you do that? This is the idea with the pole, and as you can see, that's how it is. You have to be careful if you use poles of high-powered cables. I've lost a friend of mine who worked for the local electricity authority, who unfortunately grabbed a live wire when he was up on a pole and he just fused out very quickly. So if you're using one of these, please make sure you don't do it near power cables, because it's very easy to lose control. Once that pole starts to go down, you're not going to stop it. You've got to be prepared to bounce your video cameras off the floor. And I've done it twice with my Sony equipment. They still work. There we are. And that's the result that I managed to achieve in 1986 with the pole. And as you can see here, how this starts from the inside and just blasts straight out. These are the effects that we get sometimes with crop circles. They will change character. You sometimes get this going absolutely straight out to the side and you think, well, where has it gone? And the last split second it all hooks round the very edge. Sometimes it's impossible to find out where it's actually gone. It completely blows your mind when you find you've got 33 inches of corn laying down towards an upright piece and it doesn't go into it. It just disappears round the corner, or it doubles back on itself without breaking. Mysterious objects on film. First rape circle. And that's it there. I still have the stems today. They're exactly the same. The white line represents the ground. That's how it was on the ground. And I can assure you, that's how sharp it was. That's very near the middle. This is going off towards the north. And as you can see here, there's hardly a bend in it at all. But that was the first one at the very edge. Now the problem was, on the video camera, trying to get this one out of the ground and that one in the circle. We have to use brute force to get it out. But the one on the edge, I could have tied a piece of cotton around that and pulled it out with my little finger. For some reason, the ones inside were welded basically into the ground. Literally solid. It was incredible. And again, this type of plant, when it's laying down like that, that blueness you can see is this musk that's on the side of the plant. You've only got to touch it like I'm touching that screen now and you will leave fingerprints on it. And I can assure you, when we inspected that, there wasn't a mark on it. and we inspected them so well that we only found one insect in a crop circle that looks like it had been zapped in mid-flight. Stuck into the plant was a blowfly, and he's like ready to fly with his wings out. And in Canada, they have found a crop circle with a dead porcupine in it. Squashed absolutely flat and dehydrated completely, so it didn't rot. And that's the only thing that I know that's had itself killed in a crop circle. Alright? Well, I'm going to shut it off there.